This is Judge Balin. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I heard your name.
Okay. Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during this deposition?
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
We met the person at the eye doctor's. She was working there, and she was one of the people. You'd have to go through several receptionists before you could sit down. And she was one of those people who was there. And I don't know, I'm not sure of this, because I generally went with Howard to all of his medical appointments. But somehow he had gotten to know this one woman on a friendly basis, and she would always talk to him when he came in. And so I remember one day we went in together, and she had had a child, and I guess she pulled out a picture of her little 3-month-old and very proudly showed us the picture and said what a miracle it was. She'd given birth in, I don't know, in her late 40s or something, and was very, very friendly. And I was kind of taken back by it because I thought, gee, I don't really know where this friendliness came from. I mean, I hadn't developed a relationship with her, but she certainly was acting that way towards the two of us, and it was obvious, therefore, that she must have related to Howard before. At any rate, sometime soon after that, there was a knock on our door here at the house. And I can still remember, we were in the living room together, and there was a knock on the door, and we answered it, and she was standing there. And she said, "May I come in?" And we invited her in, and she began to tell us some kind of a story. I don't remember the details, but that she needed $300. She didn't have the money. It was very important that she pay this bill, or I don't remember the details, but she had to have it. And she said, "I promise you that if you will lend me this money, that I will return it to you my next payday." And we were taken back by it, I think. And so she's standing there. And so he and I just kind of looked at each other and kind of did eye contact. And what do we do? And I wish we hadn't, but we said, okay. We really should have said, "Let us talk about it. We'll get back in touch," is what we should have said. But we didn't, because it was such an unexpected thing. And so we said, okay. And sure enough, we lent her the $300. And sure enough, at her next paycheck or whenever, she returned the money. Well, all of a sudden, she needed more money and more money. And she had all these difficulties. And she began to talk about the fact how difficult it was for her to work at the eye center because people were mean to her and had been inappropriate and had made sexual comments to her. And I don't even remember all of the details and how harsh her life was. And somewhere along the line, and I don't know when it happened because I don't know that it happened in front of me, Howard must have said to her, "It sounds like you could use some counseling," is what I'm guessing had happened. And because she worked at a good place, she had insurance. And so she became his client. Every week there was some awful thing that would happen to her over and over and over. And she always needed money to take care of whatever that catastrophe was. In the meantime, she would sometimes bring her little girl with her. And that little girl began to act as though we were her grandparents. I mean, literally, she wanted pictures to take to her kindergarten class because they had to pin up their grandparents' pictures on the wall. The mother began to, I guess, woo us by, she would bring food to us that she had made, something special. And I remember she even brought she had won a Thanksgiving dinner at the grocery store. And she said, "I want to share this with you." Suddenly, it was like she was a member of the family. And I never really liked her. But I was dragged into an emotional situation where I began to worry about her well-being. And I don't understand how all that happened, but it was psychologically, it happened. And this went on for 7 years at least.
Charlotte felt on one aspect she in some ways didn't trust her, and in some ways her heart kept going to her, to all the needs that she had, and she wanted to help her in a way. She was a helpful person. And so, she's kind of drawn into it, but it could happen to anyone.
She always knew that Howard got his check from the government because he'd been in World War II, and he got his government check, and it came on the 3rd of the month. On the 3rd of the month, she was always be at her doorstep needing money. And I'd say, this isn't right. And Howard would say, I know, but how could we not take care of her? And I said, but you've got a daughter in California that you could be taking care of who has has a school teacher and doesn't have enough money and needs help. And he'd say, well, anyhow, I want you to know that she extricated, we verified, $600,000.
When you were writing these checks to Ms. Hebert, did you expect to be paid back?
Financially, yes.
And did, in fact, Ms. Hebert say that she would pay you back?
She not only said it, but she wrote it. And she did issue 2 promissory notes to me.
And so we had all these promissory notes, and she was going to, I forget how she was going to get money because I don't even remember what it was. But we had these promissory notes. And then her little girl got some kind of a problem. And I can't remember what it was, whether it was a stomach problem or what it was. It doesn't matter. And I said, you've got to take this child to Children's Hospital in Denver, which that's the best place for her to go. So she took her to Children's Hospital. And then we were all worried about the little girl. They were always... And then she would tell us that the child had an infection and that she was referred to somebody in another state and had to she needed money to go to the other state to take her to that special doctor. There was always something. And I can remember very clearly that one of my best friends, and I can remember my niece had come to visit, both of them said, you need to get out of this. That you should stop giving her money. That's, this is not right. Why did I do it? They asked me that in court. I said I did it because my husband asked me to. And I was so tied in with him that I went right along with the fantasy. One of the things that I didn't know was that she was being seductive towards him personally, and I did not find that out until the very end. But my guess is that he tried to back out on the relationship because we talked about that over and over again, that we really didn't need to be in this. And I think she must have held it over him and said, you can lose your license.
Did Miss Hebert ever intimidate you into giving her money?
She threatened me.
Did she ever intimidate you into giving her money?
Yes.
Howard got quite ill towards the end of his life, and so I went to the accountant alone that year, and I said, Mark, I said, we have these promissory notes of someone who owes us an awful lot of money, and I said, do we have to list that as assets or something, or pay the government because of that? And he said, tell me more. And I told him, and he said, I have a telephone number for you to call. And of course it was to Jane's department at the district attorney's. And he said, this is total dishonesty. He said, don't give her any more money. And he said, I want you to call because the police need to get involved.
I did very quickly advise him to call the county attorney's office. I looked up the number and gave it to him because I felt that they could evaluate the situation. Whereas, that I thought it didn't sound right, but, they do it every day and it'd be a more professional evaluation.
I don't know whether it was a kind of acknowledging that we were, I was going to say caught red-handed, We were the victims and we were caught red-handed. Isn't that an interesting thing to say? The humility and the embarrassment of having to admit it to the world. I think that was some of the hesitation. Whether I was maybe even on some unconscious level protecting someone I'd been taken care of, so to speak, I don't know. Maybe that's a rationalization. And the truth is, I was just plain humiliated for us. It took nerve to call the police. It's interesting because there was an attachment of a negative nature at the same time, and to realize that we really had been conned. And I think I took a week or two and I said, we have to do this, Howard. And then I called.
Our office received a call from Charlotte, and shortly after that we went out to visit with Charlotte and her husband Howard at their home in Boulder. Charlotte and Howard knew that we were coming, and so they'd tried to piece together any documents that they could show us that would let us know what was happening on their side. And so Howard produced a basket of notes, and was quite agitated at the time. And these were lists of payments that he'd made to the suspect in the later criminal case, Michelle, and also promissory notes from Michelle. And since I already knew that Michelle was a convicted felon, I was extremely dubious about what Howard and Charlotte told me, that Michelle had said that she would repay all of the money that she'd taken from them. Charlotte kind of pulled me aside and into the kitchen and told me, you know, Howard's very ill and he probably doesn't have very long. And I remember being so extremely worried at that point because I didn't want to cause either of them additional stress, additional pressure. But I realized that there was going to be a real need on our end to push the case forward with some speed and perhaps to overcome some hurdles, because if that was true, then that was going to be really, it was going to really make the case much more complex, much more difficult. So I think as soon as we were out of the house that time and we were driving back to the office, we were already talking about and strategizing about how we could make contact with Howard's cardiologist and get some evidence from him so that we could move forward on that front. He was prepared to say, not only, well, Howard can't come to court and testify, but he was absolutely prepared to say he cannot be in the same room with the suspect, the defendant in this case. And so we filed for a deposition, and we were filing for a deposition on the basis that it really couldn't take place in her presence. So he couldn't come to court and she couldn't go to him. It couldn't be any type of a bedside deposition. And we had the great good fortune of appearing in front of the then chief judge here, Roxanne Balin, who had been trained in elder abuse and who really understood the dynamics of the situation very well and gave us a very strong ruling permitting us to take a Skype deposition from Howard. And so after that, it was all steam ahead, full steam ahead, to try to get Howard deposed, because we knew that he was declining and we knew that he didn't have a lot of time left at that point.
Howard's heart was getting worse and worse. He had an aortic valve, stenosis of the aortic valve, which means it was slowly closing. And we knew that his life was going. They had him filmed. He sat right there, and they filmed him, and they didn't allow me to listen, so I never heard his testimony ever. I had to go and be away while they interviewed him.
There was a change in the law which Charlotte really helped with. She was a witness before State House Judiciary Committee, And we had a State House representative, Jessie Danielson, who proposed a bill to make it mandatory to schedule the deposition within 14 days of the request. That rose out of frustration that we'd waited several months with Howard, who we knew was declining really fast and had a very grueling time during his deposition. So Charlotte told the committee about the experience that she and her husband had been put through, and the committee unanimously approved the bill, and it became law in Colorado. So now I think we have an enviable position, thanks to Charlotte's work, that we can apply for a deposition, and the courts must schedule that really fast. In Boulder District Attorney's Office, there's a pretty robust outreach program, and we asked Charlotte if she would be a part of that program, and she graciously agreed. So I think that by having the courage to come forward and to talk to other people about the reluctance and embarrassment that she felt, that she's made it easier for a lot of other people to realize that it really can happen to anyone. She received a Courage Award, really to recognise all her efforts. I'm just awed by what Charlotte has done and the courage she's shown. And I'm happy that she also can take away good and positive experiences from looking at what she's managed to achieve after the case was concluded.